Salam, peace be upon you. My name is Muhammad Layiq Sidiqi, the father of Holophase. Part 28 of Episode 7, Wave Packets as Meaning Phrases. Remember the language we are learning together. There is one field, phi, the holophase, one continuous cyclic movement from which all of reality unfolds. When phi begins to change, its first derivatives appear, and with them, three dimensions show themselves at once: time as omega, space as k, and motion as v, built from both. Every higher derivative is a finer question about how phi changes, and each one casts three shadows together: a time shadow, a space shadow, and the motion shadow. These echoes mix and weave into one another, forming the patterns we call fields, particles, bodies, thoughts, and worlds. In this picture, everything that exists is a living tapestry of phi, endlessly echoing through its derivatives and their dimensional shadows. Today, we listen to just one of those echoes. Our journey through wave semantics has already taken us from the grammar rules of travel to the very purpose of motion, the transport of information. We have seen that information is carried in modulated patterns, in structured variations in phi's derivatives. But this raises a natural question. How does this information actually package itself? How do the infinitely many possible modulations of the field organize into the coherent, recognizable units that we experience as events, as signals, as objects appearing and doing something in the world? Today, we meet the natural answer. We discover the fundamental semantic unit of traveling meaning. We explore Part 28, Wave Packets as Meaning Phrases. This is where the holophase language shows us how it builds chunks of significance from the flow of derivatives. It is the bridge between the abstract, everywhere present field and the specific, here and now happenings that fill our experience. We are now deep in the culminating stages of Chapter 6, Wave Semantics. We already have the alphabet, the grammar, the verbs of motion, and the concept of information. Now we synthesize all of these into the discrete traveling units, the phrases, that actually do the work of communicating, interacting, and building the story of reality. This is a pivotal step toward understanding how the continuous language of phi gives rise to the discrete events of experience. To feel this, let us begin with the move from letters to phrases. When a child learns to read, they first learn individual letters, A, B, C. Then they learn that letters combine into words: cat, dog, run. But a single word is often not enough to carry a full idea. For that, we need phrases like the quick brown fox, jumps over, the lazy dog. A phrase is a coherent group of words that functions as a single unit inside a larger sentence. In the holophase language, phi is the silent page. The derivatives, omega, k, alpha, curvature, and so on, are the letters, and simple combinations like a pure sine wave with one omega and one k are like simple words. They have meaning, but they are limited. A wave packet is the analog of a phrase. What do we mean by a wave packet? A wave packet is a localized, traveling lump of oscillation. It is not an infinite, repeating wave stretching everywhere. It has a beginning, a middle where the oscillation is strongest, and an end. It is a bump of patterned activity moving through the phi field. Mathematically and physically, this packet is formed by taking a simple carrier wave, a central frequency and wavelength like a basic word, and modulating it with an envelope, a slower, broader pattern that defines its shape in time and in space. The envelope groups the rapid oscillations into a single bounded semantic unit, the way grammar groups words into a phrase. Inside the wave packet, the derivatives of phi are rich and structured. At the peak of the envelope, the activity, the tally of derivative intensity, is high. At the edges of the envelope, the activity falls off towards zero. The packet has a finite duration in time and a finite extent in space. It moves with a group velocity. It carries information in the precise details of its shape, its phase, and the way it is modulated. So a wave packet is a complete, self-contained semantic phrase in the traveling dialect of the holophase language. It says something like, here is a burst of activity of roughly this character, lasting this long, occupying about this much space, moving in that direction, with these specific nuanced details. In the holophase language, wave packets serve as the fundamental traveling semantic units, the phrases or clauses of the universe. If phi is the page, the derivatives are the alphabet. Dispersion rules are the syntax and grammar. Wave packets are the coherent traveling phrases, like the quick brown fox or jumps over. And information is the meaning conveyed by the sequence and interaction of those phrases. A wave packet is the smallest unit that can travel on its own, maintain its coherence over some distance and time, and interact with other packets or with the environment in a meaningful way. You can technically speak using isolated words, but in practice it is the phrases that carry the real, actionable content. In the master tree, this gives wave packets a special position. They sit at a synthesis and bridging node. They are born in the wave semantics branch, but they become the primary entities that will interact in the branch of wave interference. And later, they will be serious candidates for the building blocks of identities and objects. Wave packets are the dynamic precursors to things. Once we have packets, we have something we can point to and say, that is a happening in the field. Scientifically, a wave packet represents a compromise, a beautiful balance enforced by the grammar of the medium. There is a fundamental principle derived from the dispersion relation and from the mathematics of waves that tells us the following. The more precisely you localize a packet in time, the shorter and sharper it is, the broader the range of frequencies you must use to build it. And the more precisely you localize it in space, the tighter you confine it, the broader the range of wave numbers you must combine. This is the time bandwidth and space bandwidth relationship. To make something sharply localized, you need many sinusoidal ingredients. They must interfere constructively in one region and destructively almost everywhere else. Because of this, a wave packet is the most compact, coherent bundle of possibilities that the medium's dispersion grammar allows. It is the optimal way to pack meaning into a traveling lamp. If you create a very short laser pulse in time, you are automatically using a broad spectrum of colors. If you focus a light beam to a very narrow spot, it will spread out as it travels because it necessarily involves a broad range of Ks pointing in slightly different directions. This uncertainty is not a glitch. It is a structural feature of how the phi language packages semantics. It means that a phrase always has some inherent spread, some fuzziness in the conjugate variables. You cannot have a phrase that is infinitely sharp in both time and frequency, or in both position and wave number. That inherent spread is what allows packets to have shape, to evolve, and to interact. The mathematical description of a wave packet as a superposition of many plane waves, each satisfying the dispersion relation and each weighted by an envelope, is a standard tool in wave physics and is elaborated fully in the Holophase papers. A wave packet is also a full-dimensional entity. Its phrase-like nature is expressed in time, in space, and in motion. In time, a wave packet has a finite duration. It has a temporal envelope. It rises, reaches a peak, and falls. Inside that envelope, there is a carrier rhythm, the rapid oscillation. The exact shape of the temporal envelope, whether it rises gently and falls sharply, or rises sharply and decays slowly, whether it is symmetric or skewed, is part of its temporal meaning. A neural spike and a musical note are both wave packets in time, but their envelopes give them completely different functional roles. In space, a wave packet occupies a finite region. It has a spatial envelope, a region where the oscillation is significant and outside of which it fades away. Within that region, it has an internal spatial texture, the carrier's wavelength or pattern. A focused light spot, a sound pulse moving through a room, a tsunami approaching the shore. In each case, we are seeing a spatial wave packet, whose envelope defines where the action currently lives. In motion, the packet is a traveling phrase. The entire spatio-temporal structure moves. The envelope travels at the group velocity, carrying inside it the oscillations and the detailed modulations. This motion can be simple, like a packet sliding straight ahead, or it can be bent, focused, dispersed, or scattered, depending on the medium structure. The trajectory of the packet is the storyline of that phrase. As the packet moves, its shape may change. It may broaden, sharpen, split, or distort, telling us the story of how it is interacting with the medium's grammar along the way. Within wave semantics, the wave packet node is the dynamic precursor to everything that feels like an event or an object. It sits above dispersion and group velocity, which determine its motion. It is the main subject of envelope evolution, which describes how its shape changes in time and space. It is the carrier in information transport, the phrase that actually carries the data. It is the thing that will interfere in the next part, when we talk about meaning interaction. It is also a candidate for the sort of persistent, coherent pattern that can later become a stable identity. This is where the continuous, field-based description of reality naturally begins to produce countable, trackable, interacting units. Here, discreteness grows from continuity. Wave packets are also deeply connected to neighboring branches. With envelope evolution, we describe the life story of a packet, its birth, its drift, its spreading or focusing. This is the phrase being spoken, with the accent and emphasis changing as it passes through different regions of the medium. With information transport, the wave packet simply is an information phrase. In many digital communication schemes, each bit or symbol is encoded as a particular packet shape, and the sequence of packets is the message. With wave interference, which we explore next, the packets are the entities that overlap, combine, and sometimes produce new, emergent patterns. When two packets meet, they may pass through each other unscathed. They may cancel in certain regions, or they may form more complex interference structures. This is the grammar of phrase-phrase interaction. With topological semantics, we can see certain special structures, like solitons and topological defects, as extreme forms of wave packets. A soliton is a wave packet that does not spread. Nonlinearity and dispersion balance perfectly, so that the packet maintains its shape over long distances. A vortex or a defect can be understood as a self-sustaining, localized pattern that behaves like a packet stabilized by topology. With quadratic and balance semantics, which we will discuss later, the stability and shape of wave packets often come from balances between energy-like measures of derivative activity. Dispersion trying to spread the packet, and nonlinearity, or topological structure, trying to hold it together. What is the semantic meaning of all this? At the deepest level, a wave packet is the dimension of event. An event is not really a mathematical point. In lived reality, an event is an extended happening. It has a beginning, a peak, and an end. It occupies some region of space, and it often involves movement. A clap of thunder, a flash of lightning, a spoken word, a heartbeat, a market transaction. All of these are events, and each of them can be modeled as a wave packet in the appropriate medium. A wave packet is the universe's way of saying, "This happened." It marks a localized excursion of the phi field away from some background state. It is a coherent excursion of activity that someone or something can detect, respond to, and remember. This is how the holophase language expresses not just static structures, but the story, the chain of happenings that makes up history and experience. From the perspective of stability, some wave packets can be very robust. When the medium's properties and the packet's shape work together in the right way, the packet becomes stable. It maintains its form over long distances and times. The classic example is the soliton. In a nonlinear medium like an optical fiber, dispersion tends to spread a pulse, but nonlinearity tends to focus it. For a very special balance between these two, a pulse can travel hundreds or thousands of kilometers without changing shape. It is like a perfectly crafted sentence that keeps its meaning through many translations and retellings. Most packets, however, have a life cycle. They are born at a source, a laser pulse generated in a cavity, a vocal cord opening and closing, a fault slipping in the Earth's crust. They propagate, in many cases changing shape as they travel. They interact. They can interfere with other packets, scatter off obstacles, or trigger new packets in other systems. And eventually, they die. They dissipate into heat. They are absorbed by a detector, or they simply spread out so much that they no longer stand out from background fluctuations. The variety of possible wave packet shapes, durations, and life stories is enormous, reflecting the enormous expressive capacity of the holophase language. The concept of wave packets is also falsifiable and heavily tested. If localized, traveling patterns could not be created and tracked, or if they did not behave as cohesive units, then this picture would fail. But in practice, we create and measure wave packets every day. For example, in optics, we generate ultra-short laser pulses, measure their duration and spectral width, and confirm that they satisfy the time-bandwidth relationship. We send them through dispersive media and predict exactly how much they will broaden. Then we measure the pulse shapes and see them match the predictions and travel at the group velocity implied by the dispersion relation. In acoustics, we create short clicks of sound and track their envelopes across arrays of microphones. In neuroscience, we record action potentials traveling along axons and see that they preserve their characteristic shape and speed. All of this confirms that wave packets are real, coherent semantic units of wave dynamics. Wave packets also structure the world we see around us. In physics and engineering, laser pulses, radio bursts, and earthquake waves are all wave packets, each with a characteristic envelope and spectral content. In chemistry, quantum wave packets inside molecules describe how electrons move during reactions. In biology, action potentials and heartbeat signals are wave packets moving through tissue. In everyday life, every clap, every splash, every spoken syllable is a wave packet in some medium. The same pattern appears in more abstract domains. In consciousness, thoughts and mental events feel like wave packets in the mind. They rise, become clear, and then fade. An aha moment is a sharp, intense packet of understanding. In language, spoken sentences are literally acoustic wave packets. But even at a semantic level, a phrase is a coherent chunk of meaning with a beginning and an end. On social networks, a meme or viral piece of content behaves like a packet of information. There is a sharp onset of popularity, a period of high visibility, and then a decay into obscurity as the packet passes through the medium of attention. In history, revolutions and social movements behave like extended wave packets in time and across societies. They have an onset, a period of intense activity, and a resolution. In economics, bubbles, crashes, and product launches are economic wave packets. They are coherent bursts of activity, with clear envelopes in time and space. In narrative and storytelling, a scene in a movie or a chapter in a book is a narrative wave packet. a coherent event with internal structure that moved the larger story forward. You can train yourself to read the world in this way. When you listen to music, instead of focusing only on pitch, listen to the shape of each sound event, the attack, the sustain, the decay. That is the envelope of the acoustic wave packet. When you watch a bird fly, see not just a static bird moving, but a moving locus of continuous activity, a packet of behavior with a beginning, middle, and end. When you watch a conversation, notice each speaking turn as a social wave packet, with a rise, a peak of engagement, and a handover. When you feel your breath, notice each breath as a physiological wave packet, the inhale, the brief pause, the exhale. A simple exercise. Go to a quiet room and clap your hands once. Listen carefully. You will hear a very sharp initial crack, then a short resonance, and then the sound falling back into silence. That whole process is one acoustic wave packet, one phrase of sound spoken by your hands and the room. If you listen this way, you start to feel how the world is made not of static things and abstract forces alone, but of happenings, of coherent, traveling phrases of activity. We return, finally, to the one field, phi, now seeing it as a master storyteller. Wave packets show us that phi does not speak in a monotonous drone, but in punctuated, coherent phrases. These phrases arise because there is a need to localize meaning, to send news from one region of the field to another, to make something specific happen here and now. They are emergent structures, the natural solutions for packaging modulation into a traveling form that respects the grammatical constraints of the medium. The continuous, infinite-dimensional tapestry of phi spontaneously weaves itself into countable, trackable, interacting phrases, wave packets. These packets are the dynamic linguistic precursors to the persistent identities we will study later. They are how the field converses with itself. As we close this part, let us appreciate that between the silent field and the world of objects lies the realm of events, coherent traveling lumps of pattern change. These wave packets are the universe's vocabulary of happenings. They are the claps, flashes, spikes, notes, and social waves from which larger stories are built. Reality speaks in phrases, not in isolated letters or in an undifferentiated hum. Each phrase has a shape, a location, a duration, and a journey. It is a happening that can be remembered, a signal that can be received, a cause that can have an effect. In our next and final part of wave semantics, we will see how these phrases interact. We will explore part 29, wave interference as meaning interaction, where we learn how phrases add, subtract, and weave together to create new meanings, the constructive and destructive dialogues that shape the evolving pattern of reality. But for now, see the world as a flowing conversation of phrases. See every sound, every sight, every thought, every social shift as a wave packet, a meaningful traveling phrase in the endless, eloquent story of the one field, phi. You are living in a universe of happenings, and you yourself are one of its most vivid phrases. Peace be upon you until part 29.